Well, hello. My name is Dr. Francheska Perepletchikova, and today, Holly Harris and I are going to be presenting the third episode in a series of 4 about core problem analysis and the 3 core senses. Welcome, Holly.
Thanks. It's so good to be here. And I'm just so excited that we're working through each core sense within core problem analysis, which is within child DBT, DBT-C, and also transdiagnostics. So CPA can be used across all therapies or
All
therapeutic
therapists,
models.
all
And
ages, all psychopathologists and without psychopathologists, exactly.
Yeah, so I just want to add that it goes long beyond DBTC, but this is where you originated it.
Exactly, exactly. And as you said, it's great that we're going to detail about each and every sense. The thing is that the information is kind of complex when we're presenting it, but the usual feedback that I get from people is when I talk about it and when they kind of hear me speak about this, and they, the usual response is like, I kind of knew all of that, and you know what? Yes, you did. Remember, we talk about the iceberg, right, of our conscious awareness. The tip of the iceberg below the waterline is the whole other mass of the iceberg, where our hardware lives, where our software lives, where we do know all about that. We know about the core senses. We know about the self-love. We do know about the sense of belonging and the sense of safety. All of it is there. All we're doing today is we're making that information conscious. We're bringing it to the level of awareness. That's all we're doing. And people connect to it very well and almost right away. And they do have this, hey, I kind of knew that. Isn't that a common knowledge? Well, we're making it hopefully a common knowledge on a level of awareness.
And what I love, I have to say one more thing before we jump into questions. I love what you have done because, yes, we all have that knowledge within us already. And what you're doing is, I always think of boiling it up to the simple level. So, as you like to say when you're working with children, you go fishing, for the fish, the deep water fish, and you're bringing them up to the surface. And you've just created this very simple way of doing very complex work. That's the way I think about it, and that's where I see the magic from my
Thank
non-clinical
you.
point of
Thank you for
view.
saying it. Well, the thing is that things that work are simple, and that's a dialectic, not easy. So, and
Exactly.
the terminology that Holly introduces, what I use with children. When we talk about fishing, we're talking about all the programs that we have been creating by making sense of the external environment, by making interpretations. All of these, not all of them, are readily available on our level of consciousness, and we need to fish them, from down and bring them up to the surface, and that's what we call fish. Fish are the programs that we are going after, and usually the ones we're going after are malware that are interfering with our ability to function. However, let's jump into the topic of
Let's
our
do it.
today.
Okay, so question number one, here it comes. Tell us about sense of safety and how it differs from sense of self-love.
So last time that we talked about the core problem analysis, we discussed that what we're after is we're after understanding what is interfering with our ability to live without suffering. Now, pain and suffering are two different things. Pain is an everyday occurrence of things happening to us, all kind of challenges that we're experiencing as painful because they introduce uncertainty. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know whether or not we'll be effective in solving those challenges, right? And although it's painful because of the uncertainty, we also need that pain because we don't grow, we don't learn without facing and resolving issues, solving problems. That is how we gain new levels of mastery. Suffering is self-inflicted. Suffering is, number one, avoiding pain, running away from pain. And there's another way in which suffering can be explained. The other formula for suffering is when we are taking our relationship with ourselves that is supposed to be unconditional. I just am, neither good nor bad. And my relationship with other people is not supposed to be a condition for me to have a normal, positive relationship with me, because again, we're trying to put conditions on something that's not conditional. So my relationship with me is that of an entity. And only then we can uphold the dialectic. I just am, neither good nor bad, an entity of human beings, like sun is an entity of stars and earth is an entity of planets. And I succeed, fail. People like me, people don't. I gain mastery, I made a mistake. It's an end. And suffering, one of the definitions of suffering is when we are indeed putting my relationship with me as dependent on relationship with other people. Now, the other way does exist. My relationship with other people is conditional on my relationship with me, because I will relate to others the way that I relate to myself. If I'm self-critical, I'll be critical to others. If I have happiness inside, I'll share happiness. If pain inside, I'll share pain. So what are we here to do with core problem analysis is heal my relationship with me in a healthy way, so I can indeed uphold the dialectic of I just am and cut it. And it's not a one-time deal. It's a thing that we need to engage in on a daily basis, right? Cutting that connection between who I am and how well I fare in life and my relations with other people.
I would
And
even say throughout the day.
throughout the day,
Practicing self-love throughout,
absolutely.
and I know we're getting off of sense of safety right now, but I think what you're doing is setting the
Putting
stage
the
for the
foundation,
now.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly, absolutely. It's a daily, sometimes minute to minute, hour to hour task in which the information field in which we exist continues to bombard us with all kind of malware, all kind of programs that are actually insane by their notions, but we treat as real. For example, the notion of worthiness. We cannot be worthy or worthless. It's a made-up concept, but we suffer because we treat it as real, right? And this is just an example of the fish, right? It's an example of a malware virus program that we built in our software, and all the programming that we receive from the external environment, from our parents, from other people, and all the things that we continue to interpret based on all of those already packaged, right? Programs in our software that continue to influence how we interpret the reality. So we're building malware on top of malware, and to be able to understand, wait a second, what is it? I first need to be able to get that program to the level of consciousness, say hi to it, moment of mindfulness, and now I can get freedom of choice from it. I cannot have a freedom of choice from something I don't even know exists. And most of the programs that we have that are malware and in our software below the waterline, they're governing our behavior without us knowing that they're even there and what their names, right? A basic psychological fact is 90%, 90, of our responses are governed by unconscious processes. So we're here to get as many as possible of those malware to the level of surface, right, to the conscious awareness, so we can override them. We can say hi to it. Oh, hi, my program that I am worthless. You are insane, this is not real, and have an ability to override. Now, go ahead.
I was just going to say, where does sense of safety fit into this?
Well, just give you a little piece of the puzzle, right? What I just said, ability to catch that program, say hi to it, and override. What is that? That is already an ability to control, real control, not an illusion of control. And we will understand what those things are later on in the talk. Real control of the only thing that we can control, me, what I do, what I feel, what I think, getting the program out, and my biology. So what you talked about right now is already an intervention, one of the interventions on how to decrease vulnerability in our sense of safety in an adaptive, healthy way, is to get an ability to control the only thing I can, because sense of safety, again, jumping ahead, is about control and is about predictability. So now let me get to your question. What is it? How it's different from the sense of self-love? Now, think about this little thing on top of my neck. It's called head with the brain in it. And this is, for all intended purposes, a biological computer, right? And we use the metaphor of biological computer because I work with children and they understand computers and I use their language. And for all intents and purposes, I said it is a biological computer with its main processes, with its memory banks and all the other things, the way that, we get information. Now, this biological computer has been in that state the way it is right now, right? It's 200,000 years old because the last part of the biological computer, the frontal cortex, was built in at that time. Think about it, 200,000 years old. It hasn't changed much because in the evolutionary terms, it's nothing, right? Drop in the bucket. I can give you an example of that very easily without giving you references. Horror movies. We know they're actors. We know this is makeup. We know it's scripted and we get scared. Why? Because our very ancient brain cannot differentiate between a reality and a picture. So this is 200,000-year-old computer. It was built in the time of the survival of the fittest, kill or be killed, right? So we all know that we cannot control other people. We cannot control the external environment. We cannot control life and circumstances. So I'm sitting in a cave, and for me to get out into the external environment and go hunt a mammoth, so to speak, that is very unsafe endeavor, wouldn't you say, right? I need to have some sort of a sense of safety because I cannot assure safety. I can't assure safety. I can get out of my house and it can be, run over by a car. Whatever we can do, we can't assure safety. And in this very unsafe world, we control nothing other than ourselves. And anything can happen at any moment. For us to be effective and to do something, we need to get what's called a sense of safety. How do I get a sense of safety? Meaning I need to get out of my cave and go get and do something to continue, to survive. And for that, I need what? I need an ability to predict what's going to happen. What can I predict to any degree of certainty? Only what I can do, right? Also, what I need is resources. I need connections. And I need knowledge. I need knowledge of the mammoth, for example, if we're going with the same metaphor, with the same, example. I need knowledge about the mammoth, how to hunt them, what they're likely or not likely to do in response. So this is accumulation of knowledge. I need to accumulate resources, what to hunt the mammoth with, right? And I need to accumulate connections because I cannot hunt the mammoth by myself. I need to hunt the mammoth in a group of other warriors, right, of other hunters, and I need to know my place in that group. I need to have good relationship with them. So sense of safety is about prediction and control and an ability to continue to accumulate knowledge, connections, and resources. How is it different from the sense of self-love? Now, talk about the dialectic, two sides to everything. One side is unconditional. The other side is conditional of our existence, right? One side is always stable, and the other side is always flexible. That's the dialectic, that's complementarity. So on that side of the existence, which is unconditional and stable, this is where my self-love is. That's why my sense of self-love is, because I was born with a instinct of self-preservation, right? And sense of self-love is an ability to connect to the self-love that we all have. We are born with it. It's an instinct, right? I need to love myself enough to be able to get through atrocities of life, right? And sense of self-love is about that. It's unconditional. I am born with love to me. I just need to learn how to connect to it at will. No conditions, obviously, no requirements. Sense of safety is on this side, the dialectic. I am not born with an ability to predict, to control myself. I don't have already knowledge and connections and resources. All of that needs to be built throughout my life. So they are on two sides of the continuum.
So many follow-up questions that we won't be able to get to today, but what comes to me is as an infant, right? I mean, we all know this. It's almost stating the obvious. You're dependent on your caregivers. And so you're not safe. And I'm thinking about how caregivers, if they're not fostering a sense of safety, what malware, as you would say, or
Oh my
programming that
goodness.
would do. So that's another whole, hour of conversation.
Absolutely.
But that's what came to me while you were talking.
Absolutely. So sense of safety starts to be built, the foundation of sense of safety, when a child is raised in a predictable, stable, protective environment where parents are the protectors, right? I talk a lot about different types of parenting, and if you're interested, there are all other kind of information on this YouTube about this, and there's specific lecture on the types of parenting. But what I want to do right now is just highlight it, since this is something that was raised. We have 4 types of parenting. Parent as a protector. This is what we want. This is the effective parenting. I know what to do. I have a capacity to do it. I am not afraid of my child, no accommodation, and I'm not making my child afraid of me. Prolonged punishment, harmful invalidation, all that, right? This is what we need. We're not born to be, right, perfect parents and what we call super parents, right? This is another thing that we need to learn. Now, next level, ineffective parenting. This is parent friend. Sometimes parents want to be friends for their children. Number one, it's not possible. You cannot be a friend to your child, and your child has other friends. And as soon as you go to the level of the friend or attempt to, you lose an ability to protect you on the same level. Not effective. Child lost a protector. Lower than that, parent servant. This is accommodation. This is, I'm so afraid of my child, and understandably why? Because some children, especially when we talk about emotionally dysregulated supersensors, they can be so volatile and so extreme in their responses that they indeed can, as parents say, suck all the life out of the family, and people in the family are afraid of causing another outburst, triggering another negative reaction that can last for hours. So they start to tiptoe around the child. And when accommodation happens, why this is so disruptive and so destructive to the child is, number one, child doesn't learn what to do instead, and how to react to stressors in a different way, other than what works is force. And he learns that if I force and fight back, and I'm physically, and verbally aggressive to other people, they leave me alone and let me do what I want, right? And they don't learn what to do instead. And the external environment is not going to be that accommodating, and your child is going to run into a lot of problems, not knowing how to deal with stressors and challenges in ways other than forceful, right? Also, deeper than that, what I'm signaling to my child is, I'm afraid of you, obviously. You are a monster. And when you talk to children and I talk to kids, and those are the ones who can, process it on a deeper level, that's exactly the language they're using. My parents think that I'm a monster, right? And of course, I'm out of control. How can I be protecting you if I cannot control anything, if I am just letting you do whatever? Of course, right? I am not being a protector. And even lower than that is parent perpetrator. This is harmful invalidation and traumatic invalidation. Harmful invalidation is all forceful techniques that we use: screaming, yelling, criticism, judgment, shaming, blaming, downward comparisons, all of these things. And traumatic invalidation, which is, sexual, physical, verbal, emotional abuse. Now, what usually happens, unfortunately, with parents who come to me with their children who are emotionally sensitive and emotionally dysregulated, again, not all supersensors are emotionally dysregulated. We're talking about situations with, emotionally dysregulated supersensors. What happens with that is, over time, with that transaction between the child need and the environment's inability to match that needs, because they were not born with the knowledge on how to raise supersensors, right? What happens is that 2 products come out of that transaction. Number one, emotional dysregulation for the child. Number 2, invalidating environment. It doesn't start that way. Most parents are not, abusive and neglectful and screaming and yelling at the beginning. No, it just ends up being as a product of that transaction, because parents don't know what to do. And what usually happens, then parents are stuck vacillating, going back and forth between accommodating, I just cannot take it anymore, just whatever, just I'm going to leave you alone so you don't suck all the air out of the entire family, and you accommodate, tiptoe. At some point, you need to get control back because you do need that child to do something, right? And then you vacillate and you go to pendulum swings to force, right? Parent perpetrator style. Screaming, yelling, forcing, criticizing, force, punishment. And you can only do that long because it doesn't really work long term, right? And at some point, you just cannot continue to fight. Back to accommodation, back and forth. Now, back to the sense of safety. What kind of a sense of safety can a child can start to develop in the environment that's vacillating between letting go of control and using force to get an illusion of control? Because we can't control other people. When we try to force them, that's an illusion of getting the control. And also what we're doing, we're teaching our children how to deal with problems, either by running away or by using forceful means to obtain compliance from other people. So we're modeling these behaviors and these solutions to our kids. So sense of safety cannot really start to develop in the environment that is going back and forth. There's no protection, there's no stability. And on top of that, these children are not learning how to control themselves in an effective way, right? Parents are not giving them the skills that they need to learn, because solid, healthy sense of safety is based on foundation of being raised in a stable, protective environment. And as you grow, you're starting to develop your ability for self-control, right? First with, no longer wearing diapers and walking and talking, and then doing other things and learning how to exert influence on the other people and solve problems. And then you're starting to learn, oh, yes, I can. And this is the way to do it. So you're starting to collect knowledge, connections, and resources. And this is something that is an all lifelong process of collection of knowledge, of abilities, and self-control indeed as well. And Holly, as you said at the beginning of our discussion today, this is why CPA is not just for children, is not just for parents. CPA for all adults, adolescents, kids, whoever it is, because it is indeed one of the tools that can give us an ability to control the only thing we can, me. And out of all of those things, the most important thing to learn how to control is the way we think. Why? Because our feelings and our actions are products of our thoughts. We all know that. We call it colloquially, I just changed my mind, right? Meaning what? I changed the way I react to things. Yes, if we change the way we think, we're going to change the products of it, the way we feel, the way we act. And getting all of this malware out from the level of unconsciousness to the conscious level, to the awareness, is this intervention on how to increase control of the only thing you can. You, and specifically your thoughts, you're cleaning up your software, and you're learning about your hardware. We're not there to change who you are. Hardware within this metaphor is what we come into this life with. Your talents, your learning differences, your predispositions to psychological disorders, physiological disorders, your preferences, your interests, all of that is prepackaged. So what we're here to do, and CPA is one of the tools, is learn about who you are. Learn how to learn about yourself more and more, how to love yourself as you are unconditionally, and live, right? Live, so learn, love, and live your David. We call this hardware your David. Live your David means self-actualize. Instead of allowing other people determine and influence and define who you are and what you need to do in life, or you trying to self-impose because you want to be better or more superior, or whatever your actual talents are not good enough, not as prestigious, let's say, right? Instead of allowing force from other people or from yourself, actually learning who you are, what your talents are, and self-actualizing them. And for that to actually happen, we not only need to know what to do, we need to have a capacity to do it. CPA gives us the capacity to do it. It's not only about parenting, and CPA is one of the main tools that we use to help parents to apply all of the, wonderful interventions that we're teaching them to do, reinforcement and validation, all the other things, and ignoring. But the capacity to do it is a separate thing. For example, I know to ignore. I know why. I even have enough of my own self-regulation, but I'm continuously having problems with ignoring my child. Why? Maybe because I have some kind of a malware program that is actually not allowing me to be effective in that process. For example,
Right.
I cannot be disrespected by my kid, and that could actually be a malware program that has all kind of connections to prior experiences and why. And for the parent to be able to be effective, we first need to get that program out and learn what it's about and have the capacity to override. Then we can get consistency. That's just like a very short example of what we do and how we do this cognitive restructuring.
Okay, so layers upon layers of deprogramming. So there's something you mentioned earlier, and it resonated, and it's something I've been sort of processing while you're continuing to talk. And I want to go back to it because I think it's a good segue into our last question. And that is, you said if you are a friend to your child, then
If
you
you
cannot
have
be the
to be, yeah,
and and therefore you are impacting their sense of safety. And
yes,
so that's a good segue into the last question, which is what are some maladaptive behaviors that children or really anyone would have with a high vulnerability to sense of safety?
absolutely. So if you attempt to be a friend, or if you go into the accommodation or harmful invalidation, all of that is setting up a stage for the child not learning how to appropriately deal with external environment. So you're not teaching the child what to do. You're actually teaching the child, forceful means to affect the external environment or to run away from challenges. That's through accommodation, right? What happens with that is the child, number one, is not being raised in the environment that is consistent. Therefore, you're able to predict consistently is very important, because sometimes, if a child is thinking, all right, if I do that, if I malbehave, sometimes my parents will ignore, sometimes they will not ignore, sometimes they will punish, sometimes they will let it go. So predictability is out, right, of the window. And this is just one small example of this. And the inconsistency, and also, unfortunately, the criticism, judgment, blaming, shaming, or accommodation, all of that puts the child in the environment that is actually not providing them with the foundation of starting to learn how to control themselves in effective ways. And if you can think about it, we cannot control, as we said, other people, external environment, life, and circumstances. And if I cannot even control the only thing I can, me, adaptively, without using force against others and myself, what kind of sense of safety can I have? Seriously, because I cannot even predict the only thing I can to any legible degree what I am going to do. When the challenge comes in, am I going to face it? Am I going to run away from it? Am I going to explode and blow up into pieces and start screaming, yelling? I can't predict that. So my sense of safety is clinically vulnerable, becomes clinically vulnerable. And that's why our supersensors, emotional dysregulated supersensors, we have so much comorbidity with anxiety disorders. Supersensors, right? That's what, because they're highly anxious, their sense of safety is vulnerable and is not functioning the way it needs to function. And if we don't have real control, the only thing we can be, we start to create an illusion of control. So imagine sense of safety is this passenger in the car, right? If you have a passenger in your car and you're driving, right? What's going to happen if you start nodding off at the wheel? What's going to happen? What the passenger is going to do?
freak out and try to wake up the
Break
girl.
out of it. Exactly. Break out and try to wake you up. Hey, dude, what's happening? Wake up. That's exactly what's happening. So sense of safety is like
Mm,
chained for life passenger in our car of life, right?
mm,
As soon as we start to lose control, and there are multiple ways in which we can get loose, we can lose control. For example, we tell other people what to do and they're not doing it, taking away of control. Other
mm,
people telling us what to do, taking away our control, right? We are in a presence of a person who is unpredictable, emotionally dysregulated, or a liar, right? We don't know what's going to happen.
mhm.
Virtually anything about the future because it all hasn't happened yet, right? So all of that brings anxiety, right? All of
Okay.
that, because all of that is what introducing uncertainty, and a sense of safety doesn't like it. And it sends two messengers to us to wake us up. Fear and anger are two
Mm,
messengers saying to, dude, you're losing control. At that point, what do we do? Again, everything comes in twos, that dialectic. Two routes. You can either control yourself to get the control back. This is, right, hopefully what we are going to do, but mostly we don't,
mhm,
because we
mhm,
all prefer to do what? Try to control other people. Don't do that. Don't stand there. If only you did what I want you to do, I would not have had that feeling, or I would not have had the outburst, right? So, and that trying to ineffective, right? So this is very ineffective. That's an illusion of control. It's not real because we can't control other people. We all prefer to do that, right? So
mm.
this is an example of the illusion of control. Now, controlling yourself also can get separated into two different routes. Controlling yourself in effective methods, and we talk about it as baking your own bread, learning how to self-reinforce, self-validate, self-love, self-compassion, self-control, right? Learning how to control yourself, what I do, what I feel, what I think, my biology, right? Self-care and cognitive self-restructuring, restructuring the way you're thinking on multiple levels, not only restructuring the things that you already know on a level of consciousness, your thoughts, but also digging out, catching the fish, as we say, all of the thoughts, programs, as we call them, right? That we're not even consciously aware of. That is the fishing process, the CPA, right? So, ineffective way of controlling yourself, self-harm, self-punishment, self-criticism, right? Self-deprecation. What we do with that determines if we're getting an illusion of control, which dysregulates our sense of safety even further long term, or we're healing and decreasing the vulnerability in our sense of safety in an adaptive way by baking the bread, right? So what
Mhm.
children usually do, who are emotionally dysregulated, they are trying to, unfortunately, always, most of the time, attempt to get an illusion of control. And it does work short term. Short term, it does work. Not necessarily all the time, but even if it works sometime, that's enough to reinforce that behavior. That's even worse. It's called intermittent reinforcement. Sometimes it does work.
And what do you mean by children getting short-term self-control? What's an example
Illusion,
of that?
illusion, right?
Yeah,
So
illusion.
I want something. My parents are saying no, they're taking away my control. I scream and I yell, and my parents give in.
Okay.
It works short
All
term.
right.
This
Short
is what
term, but long
long
term.
term, it's a
Oh, yeah.
disaster. Exactly. I'm destroying my
Mm,
relationship with other people. I am
mhm,
destroying my
mhm,
relationship with me. I am not learning what to do instead in an adaptive way. And I'm actually coding and recoding the
mhm,
maladaptive virus program of continuously using force, right? When I'm presented with a challenge, right? This is one of the things
mhm,
that is
mhm,
so problematic is when we don't know about those programs, we keep doing what they're telling us to do,
mhm.
meaning that we're coding and recoding, making them stronger, meaning that we'll be much more likely in the future to continue to use the same maladaptive.
Right. And so, in my non-clinical language, to recreate the patterns that were established in your childhood, hence the reason for children's mental health and DBT-C to go upstream and nip it in the bud, and parents also healing from their own trauma. And so, it is so crystal clear why DBT-C is so important every which way.
Absolutely. So teaching children the techniques, the skills, what to do instead, and giving them the capacity to do it by doing CPA with them, so they will understand their own programs, right? And what is interfering with adaptive functioning and their capacity to use those techniques. Let's take self-harm. Everything has multiple functions. Like all behaviors are multifunctional. Some of the functions of the self-harm can be matched with the techniques that we're teaching them, the adaptive coping skills, right? If my function of self-harm is to cope, yeah, we can give you different coping techniques. Instead of cutting yourself, use space breathing, use activation of a dive reflex, use other methods that we are prescribing. Now, but what if the function of my behavior is belonging to the group of self-harmers? I'm not going to use skills. What if the function of my behavior is to punish myself because I'm bad? What if the function of my behavior is to retaliate against my parents that didn't give me what I wanted? And I know they don't like when I self-harm, and I'm going to do it to make them miserable because they made me miserable. What if the function is, self-concept? I'm this dark person who self-harms. I will not use skills. I will not use skills because these functions do not match with the function of the skill. There's a mismatch. Therefore, we get this intermittent use of the techniques. And usually what we do with that, instead of actually understanding what the function of the behavior is, and as Marcia always say, 90% of therapeutic mistakes come from the failure to assess. Marcia Linehan, I mean, right? Assess what? Function of the behavior. And when she would be in a bad mood, she would say 100% of therapeutic mistakes come from failure to assess. Assessment of the function. So giving a person a capacity to use those techniques, of course, needs to be backed up by a person understanding what is the function of my behavior. And most of them are not on conscious awareness yet. And that's what CPA is all about. CPA is a cognitive intervention that is evaluating what are your programs, what are your cognitions, what are your meanings, what are your interpretations that you're deriving about the world that is actually interfering with your ability to be functional. And therefore we get a level of consciousness, and we are now having an ability to override because we have a freedom of choice. And when we're doing these analyses, at the end, what we get is, by that program, which sense is being affected, right? Because the thing is that those maladaptive programs, short term, can indeed decrease vulnerability in these senses. Long term, they increase. For example, self-harm. I'm just going to give you very much of just a skeleton of the CPA. Self-harm. Why do you need it? What does it do for you to self-harm? When I self-harm, other people come running, give me attention. Why do you need that? Because then I see that I'm lovable to them, and that is my condition to love myself. And or everybody comes running, and then I feel safer. Of course, people are there to support me. Wow. And therefore I'm not alone. That's belonging. So for different people, it could be one, two, or all three of them. And short term, yes, I get this decrease in the vulnerability. Okay, I'm lovable. It's okay if I'm safer. Okay, I'm no longer alone. But long term, it's a complete disaster because I need to harm myself to love myself. Seriously.
Right. There's the coding you're talking about. Yeah. Wow.
And this is what we do with our clients. We go through the analysis. We understand the ribs of that fish, as we call it, and what is the tail of that fish, that sense that propels that fish forward. And then what we do with that, and this is like the two sides to this, we say, absolutely, what you just said makes sense. It's a program.
So you're validating.
Exactly.
You're validating.
It makes sense.
Doesn't mean you agree, right? You're just
Thank you. Validation. I don't agree. I understand, right? I self-harm, people come running, and I feel safer. Of course, it's very logical because programs are logical and rational. And the other side, it's insane. At which point I say, all right, makes total sense what you said. Now you tell me why that's insane, and helping the client now restructure the way they're thinking and giving additional interventions on how to adaptively, in a healthy way, decrease vulnerability to whichever sense is being affected. And, we have specific interventions for all the three senses that we're teaching.
Well, I think you've just described the simple versus complex, or the simple and The dialectics of also being complex by asking those very simple questions and diving down into these complex layers upon layers with one coping mechanism, self-harming, and how that identifies all three core senses of drivers potentially at the same time, overlapping with each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because at the end, all of our responses, adaptive and maladaptive, have a main primary function: decrease vulnerability in our core senses. It's just the dialectic. Maladaptive
Mhm.
behaviors decrease vulnerabilities short term. I'm fine, I'm lovable. Increase long term because I'm actually harming myself to love myself, which is insane, right?
Yeah.
Adaptive responses do the flip. They may temporarily increase vulnerability in the core senses short term, and they decrease it long term. How? Remember, we talked about pain and suffering at the beginning? So when
Mhm.
challenges come my way, I am presented with this door of pain that I need to go through. There are only two doors: door of pain, door of suffering. If you're avoiding the door of pain, actually facing the challenge and solving it to whichever degree you can, or just learning from it, even if you don't solve it, if you refuse to do that, you go straight into the door of suffering, right?
Mhm.
Um, Going through the door of pain is it's painful, right? By definition. Why?
Right. At a
Because
minimum, it's uncomfortable, right? Like we always talk about growth is personal growth is uncomfortable, growing, learning is there's discomfort in learning, the
exactly why?
struggle of
Because
learning.
anything new is
Mhm.
what? Introducing uncertainty and sense of
Bingo.
does not
Yeah.
like uncertainty, right? Introducing uncertainty. So as we're going through this door of pain, our senses are like sense of safety. What if I'll make a mistake? Vulnerability. Sense of self-love. What if I'll make a mistake and nobody will love me? Sense of belonging. What if everybody will think that I'm a schmuck? No one want to be with me, right? So of course, at first, that uncertainty increasing vulnerability. But as we still face the challenge and we go through that door, we arrive at the other side where now it's long term. Decrease in vulnerabilities in the core senses. Why? Increase in mastery, increase in knowledge.
You're leveling up in gaming language.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, our knowledge, our contacts, our resources, our self control, all of that is being
Mhm.
improved, going straight into decreasing vulnerabilities in a healthy way. And this is exactly what CPA is for.
Whereas another hours long conversation, if you resist that discomfort, then you're going through the door of suffering.
If you resist going into the discomfort, yes, exactly. And
Hmm.
suffering means what? You open that door and this room is very tiny. Immediately have this wall in front of you. You're just going to bang your head on this wall. It's not fair. I was not the one to cause this problem. Other people need to resolve it for me. The wall is not moving. All you get is just a big bruise.
Hmm. And that's why I love DBT overall, because that is a full dovetail into Buddhism and
Mm,
and Zen, and just, it is what it is. I don't know. I'm boiling it down to 2 seconds here.
absolutely. But you
So,
just highlighted the definition of one of the definitions of suffering. There are two definitions of suffering. Suffering is pain plus not accepting pain.
mhm.
The Buddhism, stands on acceptance. The other definition of suffering is I am not seeing me as unconditional entity, neither good nor bad. I am basing my relationship with me on the relationship with other people. Everything is merged. People like me, I'm good. People don't, I am bad. I succeed, I am good. I don't, I am bad. All day long, good, bad, good, bad, good, bad.
Mhm.
And it tends enormous suffering. And forget good, bad. Most of the time we have this, what's called a bias to the negativity bias. We tend to see negative things over positive things. Why? Sense of
And that
safety.
goes back to survival. Yeah, okay. We just said the same thing at the same time.
Exactly. Negative things can be unsafe, right? That's why our sense of safety automatically orients us to unsafe. Safe things, positive things are safe. Therefore, it
Mhm.
takes effort, right, to orient to it. That's why we see, notice, acknowledge, and remember negative things more than positive. Then forget good, bad, good, bad. It's like bad, 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 bad. Most of the time, all day long, destroying my relationship with me.
Hmm. Okay, once again, we could go for hours and hours, just starting out with each core sense, but let's wrap it up now. And then next time we meet, we're going to talk about the final core sense, the sense of belonging, and then just bring
Looking
it all
forward
together.
to it. Thank you so much, Holly, for
You
helping
too.
to introduce and discuss the topic of the sense of safety.
All right, to be
Well,
continued.
to be continued. If you find what you see as useful, please like and subscribe. If you would like to take courses with me to get more information, to get more knowledge and skills under your belt, please look at the information in the description provided below. And I hope, Holly and I hope, that we'll see you. Bye.
Bye-bye.